In this video we are going to study a very interesting game in which you will learn the fundamental ideas in Benoni-type positions. The game started with the move d4. g6, the modern defense. Black plays in a hypermodern style. He will allow white to occupy the center with his pawns and then attack it with his pieces from the distance. White played c4. Black played bishop g7, developing the king's bishop and occupying the large dark square diagonal, where it will be very well positioned, as it will put pressure on the opponent's pawn center. White played e4, occupying the center with his pawns. Black played c5, attacking the opponent's pawn center, with the idea of destroying it before it becomes too dangerous. If white now captures the c5 pawn, black can play knight a6, with the idea of then capturing the c5 pawn and recovering the material. Black would have very good play. In the game, after the move c5, white advanced with d5 to keep his central pawns together. Black played d6, connecting his pawns and allowing the development of the queen's bishop. White played knight c3, developing his queen's knight. Black played knight f6, developing his king's knight and preparing to castle. White played bishop e2, developing the king's bishop. Black castled. Now, white played f4, starting to advance his kingside pawns. White's plan is to continue with knight f3 so that he can attack in the center by advancing with e5. Black played e6, attacking the opponent's pawn center. If white now plays e5, black can play d takes e5. After f takes e5, black plays knight f to d7. After, for example, d takes e6, f takes e6. The e5 pawn is attacked by two pieces and black will gain the advantage. White can try queen d6, to counterattack against the e6 pawn. Black can play knight takes e5. After queen takes c5, white maintains the material balance. But black plays knight a6, developing the queen's knight and gaining a tempo by attacking the opponent's queen. After, for example, queen a3, to keep the c5 and b4 squares under control to prevent the black knight from going to those squares. Black can play queen h4 check. After g3, black plays queen d4 and is winning. After the move e6, white can play h3, taking control of the g4 square, to prevent black's queen bishop from going to that square. Black can play e takes d5, eliminating the opponent's central pawn. After c takes d5, a typical Benoni position has been reached. Black can play queen e8, threatening to capture the e4 pawn. Black has very good play. For example, queen c2 would not be good, to defend the pawn. Because black plays knight takes e4 and is much better off. Since after knight takes e4, black plays bishop f5, pinning the knight on e4 and threatening to capture it. After bishop d3, black plays bishop takes e4. And after bishop takes e4, black responds with f5, attacking the enemy bishop, which cannot move because it is pinned. Black is going to get the piece back and has the advantage. In the game, after the move e6, white played knight f3, developing the king's knight and preparing to castle. In addition, the knight will support the attack in the center with e5. Black played e takes d5, eliminating the opponent's central pawn. If white now plays e takes d5, black can play bishop f5, developing the queen's bishop and increasing control over the e4 square. Black can continue with moves like knight e4, rook e8, knight d7, a6 etc. and has very good play. In the game, white captured with the c-file pawn. After c takes d5, a typical Benoni position has been reached. In this type of position, white's plan will be to try to advance with e5 to attack in the center and the kingside. For his part, black has several strategic plans. They can play the move rook to e8, to occupy the e-file with their rook, where it will be very well positioned, as it will increase their control over the e5 square and prevent a possible attack by the opponent. In addition, it will put pressure on the e4 pawn, which could be vulnerable. They can also play the move bishop g4, with the idea of eliminating the f3 knight, which is a very strong piece, as it supports the attack with e5. The queen's knight can develop on the d7 square, from where it will control the e5 square and prevent a possible attack by white. Black can also play a6, with the idea of advancing with b5 and expanding with their pawns on the queenside, to take advantage of the majority of pawns on that flank. Now black played bishop g4, developing the queen's bishop with the idea of eliminating the f3 knight. If white now attacks in the center with e5, black can play bishop takes f3, eliminating the white knight. After bishop takes f3, black plays d takes e5. After f takes e5, the f6 knight is attacked. But black plays knight f to d7 and the e5 pawn is attacked by two pieces. White can play e6, to defend his pawn and attack the opponent's knight. But black plays knight e5, with the idea of eliminating the f3 bishop. For example, after bishop e4, to keep the bishop alive. Black can play f takes e6. After d takes e6. Black plays queen f6, mobilizing his queen and threatening to checkmate on f2. Black can continue with knight c6, to complete the development of his minor pieces and has a clear advantage. For example, in case of bishop e3, to defend the f2 point and attack the c5 pawn. Black plays knight b to c6, completing the development of his minor pieces. It is much more important the development of the pieces than the material, since the white king is still in the center without castling. After bishop takes c5. Black plays knight c4 and creates serious threats. For example, in case of bishop takes f8. Black plays queen h4 check and has a winning attack. For example, in case of g3. Black plays bishop takes c3 check, taking away the support of the bishop on e4. After b takes c3. Black plays queen takes e4 check and the white position collapses. Black is winning. In the game, after the move bishop g4 white castled. Black played bishop takes f3, eliminating the enemy knight, which is a very strong piece, which can support the attack with e5. White played bishop takes f3. Black played knight b to d7, completing the development of his minor pieces and increasing control over the e5 square. Black has managed to prevent white's attack with e5 and has very good play. He can continue with moves like rook e8, to put pressure on the e4 pawn. He can also play a6, with the idea of advancing with b5 to expand with his pawns on the queenside, to take advantage of his pawn majority on the queenside. Now white played king h1, placing his king on a safer square, to avoid any surprises along the a7, g1 diagonal. Black played a6, with the idea of advancing with b5. If white now plays a4, with the idea of controlling the b5 square and preventing black's pawns from advancing. Black can play rook b8, preparing to advance with b5. White can play a5, taking control of the b6 square. Black can play knight e8, freeing up the action for the bishop on g7, the knight can go to the c7 square and has good play. For example, if white plays g4, with the idea of attacking on the kingside. Black can play b5, advancing the pawns on the queenside. White can play a takes b6, capturing en passant. After rook takes b6. The a6 pawn is defended. The black rook exerts pressure along the b-file. The knight can go to the c7 square and black has good play. In the game, after the move a6, white played bishop e3 completing the development of his minor pieces. Now, black could have advanced with b5 but in the game he played rook e8, activating his rook and putting pressure on the e4 pawn. White played g4, starting to advance his kingside pawns, with the idea of attacking in this area. Black responded with h6, taking control of the g5 square and, at the same time, opening up the h7 square to be able to retreat his knight, since he had no retreat squares. White played g5, attacking the opponent's knight. Black played h takes g5. If white now plays f takes g5, black can respond with knight h7, retreating his knight to a safer square and threatening to capture the g5 pawn. After queen d2 to reinforce the defense of the g5 pawn. Black can play b5 and has very good play. In the game, after h takes g5, white played e5, attacking in the center and threatening to capture the f6 knight. Black played g takes f4. And now bishop takes f4 would not be possible, because black responds with knight takes e5 and has an advantage. In the game, white captured the f6 knight. Black played rook takes e3, capturing the enemy bishop. White played f takes g7, capturing the black bishop. Black responded with knight e5. White has won a piece, but black has obtained several pawns in return. He will be able to continue with moves like queen h4, king takes g7, rook h8, and will be able to organize a very dangerous attack on the king side. Now, white played bishop g2, freeing up the action for his rook and threatening to capture the f4 pawn. Black played queen g5, moving his queen to the kingside attack and defending the f4 pawn. White played knight e4, centralizing the knight, attacking the opponent's queen and d6 pawn. Black played queen h4. Now, it would not be good to capture the d6 pawn with the knight, because black answers knight g4 and is threatening to checkmate on h2. After h3, to prevent checkmate, black plays rook takes h3 check and the white king will not be able to escape checkmate. For example, after bishop takes h3. Black plays queen takes h3 check. And after king g1. Queen h2 is checkmate. And in case of king g1, black plays rook h1 check. And after bishop takes h1, black plays queen h2 checkmate. In the game, after the move queen h4, white played queen d2, with the idea of defending the second rank with his queen and trying to avoid the possible mating attack. Black played king takes g7, capturing another pawn and freeing up the back rank so that he could bring his rook into the attack on the kingside. White played queen f2, with the idea of exchanging queens to repel the attack and also threatening to capture the f4 pawn. The game continued queen takes f2. Rook takes f2. And now black played f3, attacking the enemy bishop and blocking his action, so that the white knight can also be captured. Black is going to recover the piece and is going to have an advantage. White played knight takes d6, capturing a pawn. Black responded rook d8, putting his queen rook into play and threatening to capture the opponent's knight. White played knight takes b7, capturing another pawn and attacking the opponent's rook. Black played f takes g2 check, capturing the bishop and regaining the piece. After king takes g2. Black played rook takes d5. The position has been simplified, black has an extra pawn, his pieces are more active and black has the advantage. White played b3. Black played knight d3, invading the enemy camp with his knight and attacking the opponent's rook. White played rook to c2. Black played rook e1 and white resigned. Since in case of rook takes e1, knight takes e1 check follows and black wins. A very instructive game, in which we have seen the typical plans in Benoni type positions.